Hello everyone, this is Timothy Coleman and welcome back to the fitness channel. Now, today I'm going to be talking about a topic that has to do with like kind of disordered stuff again, and it is extreme hunger. What is it? Extreme hunger is not just binge eating mindlessly. It's not just being really hungry one day and eating a bunch. No, it usually comes from a lot of restriction. Now, I wrote down some notes on my phone here in order to make sure I'm hitting all the points and explaining it. But basically, extreme hunger, it's overwhelming, it can be scary, it can be out of control, especially if you're coming out of like restricting yourself a ton. But it's not just some sort of addiction or issue, although it can lead to one. But it's actually like a recovery mechanism, biologically, you know? And so I'm going to be breaking that down to you guys. But first, I'm going to give you guys some examples. So I was looking around on some subreddits of people talking about their issues with extreme hunger, and they're talking about how they restricted eating for months on end, or even just a few weeks, or even years. And after that, once they started eating again, every day they were able to they're able to pack down 8,000 to 10,000 calories a day. Some people even more than that. When I was disordered, I made a video about this. If you want to go watch that, I'll link it in the description for you guys as well. But when I had like this disordered eating, I was able to slam down like 7,000 or 8,000 calories a day for a couple of days. And then after that, it kind of went away and my hunger wasn't very extreme at all after that. And a lot of people say that it's from your energy deprivation. You know, you deprive yourself of energy for so long that your body, once it finally sees that there's energy available to it, it's going to take in as much as it can, you know? And so it's when your body demands like food very frequently and very intensely, and it's beyond what people might think is reasonable. And it's not just your appetite or your cravings, it's kind of mental too. And it's just your response to being so put down by dieting or really just like fasting or eating disorders. And it can also be from, overtraining and stuff. So it's not just in your head, it's actually a real physiological reaction. It's driven by your hunger hormones, your brain signaling, your survival system especially. It's really just your body trying to survive. It's your body looking around being like, hey, I have not been eating enough. And once it realizes that it's able to eat again, it's like, let's ramp up those hormones. Let's really get you eating everything you can find for a while. So really it's just your body trying to keep you alive. I mean, because if you restrict food, even for a few days, but especially for weeks or months on end, especially like a fast or something where you're literally eating nothing, your brain will interpret that as a famine. Because like, think about it. Your brain's just trying to survive. It's not trying to diet. It's not some machine that's like burning fat and like trying to make you look as best as you can. It's just trying to survive. It's trying to do what it can to stay alive and live. That's why we store body fat. We store energy that we're not going to use now that we can use later, you know? So what you're going to do, what you're going to feel during extreme hunger, it's usually after a period of restricting or a very long diet, maybe a diet that went a little too long, and you'll get something called increased ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone. It is the hunger hormone, I should say, and it goes way up, especially when you start eating again. So you'll start obsessing over food and stuff when you start eating again, and you have to kind of wait for it to go back down. The next thing I want to say is decreased leptin. Now, leptin is another hormone, and it's the one that it signals your body that you're full. When you eat more, leptin goes up saying, hey, I don't need to eat anymore. Everything's all good. But that hormone is not as strong, and it's not going to be produced as much, even if you eat a lot after or during like a period of increased hunger like that. So you kind of end up feeling less satisfied, and you have to go for very, very high forms of stimulation, aka you have to eat a lot in order to feel satisfied. Another thing I would say is something I would call heightened food reward signals. And by that I mean that junk food or high calorie foods, or whatever foods that fix cravings or help your cravings, feel addictively appealing. Like, you eat them and it's just euphoric. It's just great. And that's kind of where people start saying, like, hey, is this like just a different eating disorder? Is this just a food addiction or something? And, I guess it could be, especially if you haven't like starved yourself or anything. But I wouldn't really jump to that conclusion if you have been starving for a long time or very strict about your diet for a long time, because really, it might just be some sort of like issue with not eating. And maybe it's not really an addiction thing, it's more so just a thing that your body's doing to try to survive. Another thing, and this is one of my biggest fears, and this was one of my biggest fears when I had a disorder myself, is metabolism slowing down. So your metabolism probably does slow down a little bit, at least during the times where you are like avoiding eating. And it's trying to, like I said, it's trying to survive. So it's shutting down things that it doesn't really need to be doing as much, to conserve energy on things that it needs to be doing more, to just stay alive, Now, I'm not exactly sure how long that lasts. I think it depends on how long you're restricting for. Like, if you restrict for a few weeks, it might last like a couple weeks or a few days. But if you're restricting for like a year, it might take a very long time for your metabolism to recover. And the next thing a lot of people fear is muscle breakdown and stress. Your muscle mass will be lost if you're restricting for a long time. And so when you get this extreme hunger, you might gain fat and burn away your muscle. You may have burnt away your muscle, burnt away a lot of fat too, but then you do some extreme eating and you get some body fat back and your muscle's gone. So you might actually end up worse than where you started. And that's why it's such a bad cycle to go into. Plus, it's just kind of miserable, and it's just a terrible feeling and a terrible existence to have. So, what's the result from all this? What should you do if you have some sort of issue with extreme hunger? Your body will push you to eat a lot, all right? It's going to push you to eat now. It's going to push you to eat right when you start eating again. It's going to say, let's keep doing this more. And that is to restore balance and to prevent future starvations, all right? It is just trying to survive. It is just trying to get its energy needs. That's what it's doing. It's doing what it's supposed to do, and fighting it is hard. So the common triggers for extreme hunger, I'm just going to go over some very common triggers so you can kind of identify whether or not you're experiencing extreme hunger or not. It's extended fasting, so like not eating for several days, several weeks at a time, or months or longer. Dieting under maintenance for a long time. Now, a lot of people, if you're just doing a cut, obviously you don't want it to be excruciatingly long. If you're doing a cut for like 2 years or something, right? Because you have like a really high body weight, you might suffer some kind of craving or extreme hunger because you've been restricted for so long from stuff that you used to have like every day, right? Low body fat with low calories is another thing. So if you are eating like a very low calorie diet, they call them VLCDs. It's an acronym, that's what it stands for. And your body fat percentage is really low, let's say like 8% or 6%. Extreme hunger is going to kick in. All right, you don't have a lot of body fat or a lot of extra energy to stay alive off of. Another common trigger that people miss is binging and restricting cycles. And you might say, well, when I'm binging, I'm feeding that extreme hunger over and over. So shouldn't I be able to binge and restrict over and over? Well, not really, because it turns into a very exhausting cycle, and eventually you just want to stop restricting and you just want to binge. That's all you want to do, right? Another thing is excessive cardio without fuel, aka without eating. So if you're doing all this cardio because you're trying to burn off so much weight and you are barely eating, it's going to be extreme hunger. Another thing is cutting out entire food groups. Now this one, I don't know. Some people can manage this one well. And I'm talking about macronutrients like carbs, okay? But there are plenty of people that'll cut out carbs and they'll be fine. They actually prefer it. They enjoy it. I know a few people on keto that have really liked it and it's not even like hard for them. So you may not get extreme hunger there. I don't know. Probably won't. It really just depends on who you are. A lot of this stuff is very individual as well. You have to keep in mind. And then even mental restriction can trigger some sort of extreme hunger feeling. It's not quite the same because it's not really your body's physiological response, but if you're looking at food groups and saying, I shouldn't eat that, even though you actually all have been eating it for like a while, once you kind of get rid of that mental restriction, you might be prone to eating a lot of it, right? Because you're not even like trying to hold back or whatever. So, thinking about food constantly, feeling full but still wanting to eat even after you're full, having binge episodes, feeling out of control, craving high-calorie foods, eating beyond discomfort, or guilt and shame after eating, which leads to more restriction, which leads to more hunger again, are very clear signs. They are signs that are going to show you exactly what's happening. It's going to show you your extreme hunger, right? Now, how long does it really last? I went into this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to try to be a little more detailed with it. Extreme hunger, the simple answer, right? The easy answer is it lasts as long as it takes for your body to feel safe again. It just lasts as long as it lasts, right? But that's not really a time frame. It's different for everyone. But generally, 1 week of heavy restriction, maybe 1 to 2 weeks of stable eating again, and then you'll be pretty recovered. You know, that's not too long. A month plus, like over a month of under eating or fasting cycles, it might take you 1 to 2 months of consistently eating to kind of get that feeling to go away. Now, severe restriction or disordered eating, or just like going a real long time, I'm talking like 6 months, a year, something like that, it might take several months to normalize. In the worst case that I was able to find on the subreddits I was looking through, there was this guy that said it took him, I think, like 13 or like 14 months. He had 11 months of like crazy hunger, and then like 2 to 4 months of like having an elevated appetite after that, like just still wanting to eat more but not like binge necessarily. So it can take you a while to normalize. And then in my own experience, I had this kind of issue going on for about 2 months, and my extreme hunger lasted about a month or something like that. But here's when it fades. It'll fade when you start eating enough consistently, you stop restricting like crazy, you give time for your hormones to rebalance, and your body regains a little bit of lost muscle or lost fat or whatever, just, you know, because it gives it like a safer feel. And yeah. So here's my best strategy I would go about it with, all right? I guess like the cure in a way. Eat at full maintenance at least. Every day, even if you don't want to eat, try to eat at full maintenance. And if you're trying to bulk up, maybe on muscle, maybe a slight surplus if you want, but I wouldn't really focus on that. I would just focus on trying to get yourself around maintenance for now. Try to eat consistently throughout the day. That means like 2 or 3 meals a day, maybe a few snacks in there. Eat balanced meals too. Try to include all the macros, all right? Try to get a good amount of carbs, a decent portion of fats, and a lot of protein. I would say get a lot of protein. I feel like That'll help a lot. Avoid skipping meals or fasting completely. Now, in my life and my habits, those are my dogs. In my life and in my habits, I'm not big on breakfast. I don't like eating breakfast. I don't like eating as soon as I wake up. It actually makes me feel quite sick. So I never really eat breakfast anyways. But if you were someone who is regularly eating breakfast before you fell into like a restriction cycle or whatever it is, I would try to get back to eating breakfast again every day and trying to have the same kind of meals you had when your eating wasn't so disordered. So that's what I mean by avoid skipping meals. I've always skipped breakfast, so I wouldn't have an issue skipping breakfast if I was recovering or something. But other people, that might make them binge later in the day. And then, like, this one's tough for people, but let yourself eat more than feels reasonable if your body's asking for it. Like, if you have already eaten to maintenance, or you kind of feel full but you're still like, I want to eat more, then go ahead and do that, right? And I'm saying only in cases of extreme hunger, right? If you have been eating regularly and never really been disordered about it or restrictive about it, then I wouldn't just eat whatever you want. This is only for cases of people who have restricted for a long time and they need to kind of get themselves back to that level. Another thing is, don't compensate with over exercising, right? Don't eat like an extra 2 cookies or 5 cookies or 10, whatever, and be like, all right, now I gotta run 13 miles. Like, don't do that. Come on. Because look, if you ignore it or try to restrict, you're going to go into this cycle of binging and restricting over and over again. You're going to be eating a lot and restricting a lot, and you'll never hit that point where your diet is balanced. Because it goes like this. You restrict, your body panics, then you binge, and then you feel guilty, and then you restrict again. See where I'm going with this? It just keeps going over and over and over. You cannot heal from extreme hunger by trying to fight it back, okay? You just can't. That's not how it's going to work. Once you feed yourself, here's what'll happen. Your hunger will decrease to normal levels. It will go back down. Alright? Your obsession with food would fade. Your body fat and muscle will probably balance out more, especially if you have a good weightlifting program. But I wouldn't really be too focused on exercise and weights at first, because that might kind of lead you to overdo it. So only when you feel like you're ready. Your mood will improve for sure, because your hormones will be kind of much more regulated. You'll just be less irritable and you'll just be feeling better. So your mood should be better. Your energy will return, right? And you'll gain control without needing to constantly test your willpower, right? Instead of trying super hard to test your willpower, eventually you'll just gain control. You'll just be like, whatever, it's fine. So here's some tips that I have for you guys. All right, these are my tips that I put together. Track hunger cues. All right, try to see when your hunger cues are the most intense, so you can kind of plan around it. All right. Don't eat distracted. All right. Try to stay mindful of what you're eating and how much you're eating, all right? Don't distract yourself with a show or something, because you might actually get very lost and you might actually not even be feeling all that hungry by the end, but you're still eating because you weren't focused on what you were doing. The next thing, this is hard, but reassure yourself constantly, all right? That's healing. That's not failure, that's healing. Try to reassure yourself as much as you can. Look for other people online who've had similar experiences and, have been able to recover, and let that motivate you. Another thing is, I would say avoid the scale for a bit. This one's hard too if you're super obsessed with how much you weigh, but you'll want to stop weighing yourself 3 times a day or 2 times a day or even every day. Don't weigh yourself every day anymore. You want to get it to a point where you're weighing yourself once a week, once every 2 weeks, kind of a more healthy, less obsessive way of going about it. And this is especially so in the first few days, because your water retention will fluctuate like crazy, all right? You might go up 7-8 pounds on the scale when you barely even gain a pound of fat, all right? Another thing is focus on your performance, not just your weight. So focus on how well your energy is, how well your sleep is, how well you do in the gym. And try to avoid looking at foods as good and bad foods, because that kind of brings forth a very disordered eating kind of pattern. And let me just tell you this real quick from my own personal experience. Sleep is one of the biggest things to me when it comes to this, because when I had issues with restricting, I could not sleep. It was terrible. My adrenaline was through the roof. My body wasn't producing hormones correctly, so it wasn't producing probably enough melatonin to fall asleep. It was bad, all right? Even though I was exhausted, I had barely any energy because I wasn't eating. I just could not sleep. It was terrible. I was tired all the time. I could barely function. I had a job that I was expected to, do a lot at, and I was struggling to keep up with that, and I had school on top of it. So much stuff that you should have energy for, and I was not giving myself the energy, and that was leading to me not being able to sleep, which then in turn I had even less energy. You will sleep so much better on a regular diet. All right? So what comes after? What comes after? When your extreme hunger fades away, you'll be in a good place, all right? You can build lean muscle. You could either bulk or you could maintain, do some sort of recomp or something, whatever. But you can build lean muscle, all right? You can cut fat slowly and strategically when your body's ready, and not just try to do it all or nothing style, like all at once. And you can maintain a healthy physique with manageable hunger and normal hunger, all right? So here's the bottom line. Here's what I want you to take from this. Kind of cut down into a few words. Extreme hunger is your body trying to save you, okay? It's not trying to sabotage you or make you feel terrible about yourself. You want to feed it and you don't want to fight it, all right? It's not the enemy, but it's really the starting of some sort of healing phase. That's how you start healing. So what I think you should do to help you stay on track is maybe build a 7-day or, just like a plan that goes for 7 days that you can repeat over and over, that has a decent diet that's pretty normal. And if you go off the plan or you eat more than is on that diet, that's fine. Don't try to stick to it. Don't be obsessive about it. And another thing is, once your hunger stabilizes, kind of reassess yourself, realize what goals you want to go for and how you should approach it at a slower pace. And learn how to slowly transition to a cut or a bulk or whatever you do, instead of just doing it all at once or none of it at all. So that's really all that I've written down for the notes. But to go into like personal experience just a little bit more, is that extreme hunger is scary, okay? When I had extreme hunger, the first thing I went and did was I went and bought I think 6 crumble cookies or something. I didn't eat them all at once, but over the span of a couple days, I ate them all amongst other things I was eating already. I'd eaten some ice cream. I'd eaten part of a cake. I'd eaten pizzas. I ate a bunch of stuff. All right. And eventually my restriction wasn't crazy long, so it didn't last. The extreme hunger part didn't last too long. But by the end of it, I was like, I don't really want this stuff anymore. I actually want to go to a balanced diet, right? And it's weird to think about, where it's like let's say you're talking to one of your friends and they're like, hey, let's go to McDonald's, right? And you're like, I don't know, I don't really want McDonald's. I just want a nice chicken breast with some broccoli, maybe some potatoes or something. And they're like, oh, you're just saying that because you wanna lose weight and be in a healthy diet. And it's like, not really. I'm actually just kind of done with eating stuff like that. I actually want to have more structure and feel better about my diet and have a better diet. And that's when you know that it's going to be good. That's when you know it's going to get better. is when you stop craving all these crazy high calorie whatever, and you actually kind of want to have a good diet, and you actually kind of want to have a balanced approach. All right. Now, the biggest mistake, and I'm sure something you've thought of throughout this whole video, was what if it never stops, right? What if you just binge eat and then you have a binge eating disorder where you're just eating so much all the time forever? I mean, at some point you'll realize that your hunger hormones aren't all out of whack, you aren't restricting anymore, and hopefully by that point it will be easier to control your diet. But if it's not, I would suggest looking for someone to help you, or some sort of medical professional that knows what they're talking about and good methods to get yourself to a balanced diet or a structured diet. And if you're too afraid to get someone to help you with that, maybe just look online for other people's experiences and how they were able to stop binge eating and go to a regular diet over time. It's not an overnight thing, though. There will be times where you might relapse into old habits, where you might struggle with a transition and you might go a little off plan. But in the grand scheme of things, if you stay consistent, that's the key. If you stay consistent, you'll be good. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. Sorry that it was kind of a longer one, and I'm sorry that it's coming out a little bit later than usual. I have been very, very busy, but I still wanted to get a video out this week, so I decided to sit down and try to get this video out, and I'm working on it for a couple days before I get it out to you guys. So thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this helps if you're going through an issue with extreme hunger. I know it can be scary. I know it can be rough. I went through it at least once, and I know how hard it can be to kind of try to break a restriction habit and being so obsessed with how you look and your weight on the scale and everything. So I know how it feels. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.